It was the 9th of AV as the blood-red moon overhead would seem to have a will to remind of such date of historical significance when seems of all that stood still during feast days that would seem to wish to remind of all things that hadn't changed. We still have wonders in the sky and in nature surrounding that speaks contrarily and reminds that all things have ever been rearranged as though in apexing proportion and accordance to and with maelstrom of storming emotions demanding distinction as one collective being state of inside environment's own. Can almost suspend the time here as if in rendezvous mode and siesta time and hammock swinging in both the head and body dismiss the great in the exploding shells, boys. Only at the expense of romanticizing the bloody god-awful conquests up ahead. Man alive, it's wonderful. Is anyone rolling the camera footage on this? Judah Mac's face suffused with the rich obtrusive light of later day that's otherwise sifting shadow's hand, siphoning there and suffusing here and at times reminding of the full composite day all at once, and like springs of a creek's watery rivulets passing atop of craggy rockbed bled, having forgotten to segue gracefully unto this eternal hour of ethereal twilight's beckoning. Overhead the humongous crows perched on tree limbs squatting and darting their malicious beady eyes like broken seconds ticks on malfunctioning clocks while speedily about viciously stabbing their beaks into their wings before just as quickly returning to their automatic surveying mode. Frantically as though in need of an elusive fix. Thereby generating an air of appeaseless panic as persons on ground converse with soldier escorts who storm and scurry to the heated zone of battle after losing their tanks and guns. These resorted to going head first with boots on the ground in guerrilla-style warfare mode and soon to meet up with Judah Maccabees and his compatriots when the adage was oft repeated. Judah mimicking the words of Tanakh and of common men suddenly parroting each other. Saying with folks wishing something other than for the welfare of Israel penetrating like so any step closer to Jerusalem like this can only be met with rank discriminant suspicion as her warfare must dominate and we are her warfare. Unapologetic and damn proud. Adding while overtaking the man with the ladder's head disappearing for a moment between Judah's armpits, infantryman ahead of his congressional medal EJ goes. He goes ahead of you here. Loses 3 fingers and a right hand to your bruised toe yet steps into the full measure of what's required of him, over and beyond. Make like him. Turning toward the man running through across the terrain after leaping out of the all-terrain vehicle he said, adding, one day to commit a word to paper about this, Gili, Yah? To which the private said, if for nothing else than to hurl her into the great Euphrates. The man pronounced Euphrates with the first 2 syllables only with S, still added, and for the mention, J Mac, I'll Bill Yah. Quadruple A-Ru, Yah. Over top of the prevailing silence the clouds a ceaseless wonder hearers, 'twas like watching a scene adapted to the big screen when scarlet red sky mirroring a hemorrhaging atop areas of the Mount of Olives lent to the mystifying appeal and nature as the wobbly visual depiction seemed to in the mind present the large body a celestial wonder closer to the ground and similarly ferment its own bravado form somehow. Having the effect of pushing back against the war-torn elements as evidences of combat and conquest as though in competition for what walked through individual homes world around. Courtesy Guildford Bates' nauseating real stench of an experience in rampant linger about disembodied spirits as hat-feathered mark of his ingenuity and all putrid smells in conspiration with what ravages of famine evince contaminating before condemning homes and health states world around. These fields suddenly lagoon like where weighty gluttonous clouds rich and wafting and with redolent aroma of soppy wet eye and nasal passage assaulting nature's acrid smells and toothy tongue combing tastes while only reticently lifting and foreboding only where portending the ominous while stopping just shy of diluting intensity where troops marked with the likes of bottom jug fermentation and salt shakers last unmoistened clusters unable to shower away such sifting cleaning pungency. What overhead seemed to render even the expansive ocean as but a murky pond similarly comprised the active sense of captivating interest here that spoke toward a twilight hope as if 'twas horizon that had some comforting word to impose atop of smoking vista. For taking a moment to inwardly reflect was a pardonable offense encouraged by nature that itself in overhead and sideways flitting sparrows indigenous to the region presented itself as the epitome of the gratuitous spectator here. Seemed, on the heated affairs of same smoking warfare helplessly as though magnetically compelled within a gift evenly dotting the maintained circumference of their squawking trajectory around every exploding discharge that would seem to almost repel the live aspects of fickle nature as though assaulted by and seeking permission from them. Following what he'd felt was his final hour when wearing those 2 jihadists taking him hostage like hooded ponchos, it was only now that he stepped into the expiring final moments of the uninvite that was challenged fate that wore him on the hour. To his oblivion leering like a calculating prowler sizing up mealtime in its tantalizing bait. Judah at the cost of losing his right arm sacrificed the rest of his limb when blanketing without a second thought but idling explosive artichoke, the hand grenade stealing more than the hand that overworked replacement he would hope to similarly utilize with mastery. Today he used it to rifle off machine gun generating mangling rat attack capsulettes in steel rounds, of which several impact with his, Escher's, opening an armory vest while the latter was remorselessly swatting it and him while rolling against the charred terrain in an unchaste wind gut pummeling desperate attempt to whack the hell out of the yet extinguished leaping flames. These that drape him like a human candlewick, rolling Reuben's ignited self unto the unconscionable notion of a screaming incineration overtaking one half of the Sons of Thunder Brothers tag team in Big Guy Reuben. From out of nowhere in the thick of both dusk and the desert garb version of forest life foliage thickery the breath of flamethrower lighting him ablaze before EJ. Responding by burying precautions when braving the open terrain. The head hit of the exterminator unable to heap upon him the any valor in a feeling of thwarted herd mentality advantage alongside his comrades here that satisfaction in the face of battle throw contest was of the pulse-trombing heated and uncompensated variety when tail and head deep it buried its plummeting contour of aerodynamic and reinforced nose into its stopping point was EJ's aortocardium vortex, an inviolable space that any unpurposed entry avoiding the doctor's prescription meant the cinching of the lifeling legacy drama. 'Twas only short hours that seemed to resist twilight's beckoning invite sender's notion that the soldiers were carte blanche wiping hordes of assailing extremist jihadists out as though on a carefree backwards gallivant. Between rounds and video arcade like bellows and fizzling shouts all of Judah Mac, Reuben alongside brother Jacob and EJ were shooting the proverbial stuff as though to keep unshorn morale high. Revisiting the temple travesty occurring 2 years and some months ago. Like nothing you'd ever witnessed before as these defy what could stopgate fluidity in concerted response here while over the shoulder sparing a snide while diatribing it by welcoming the random word as catharsis to rejuvenate and dispel exerted energies. And the miracles since then. Jack Russo, he had his zombies. Benchley, Peter, if memory serves, had his sharks. The Israeli army and IDF, we got our terrorists. Was Reuben's pronunciation of choice for them. That's why I'm out that seesawing melody that way. To which Judah Mac, prone and against the gutted out trench readjusting position. Learning body's new center of gravitational motion while fidgeting and belly down inching as he kick out debris from ICBM and shelling Earth's leveling impacts recently cutting a convenient foxhole slab of terrain's circumference before the major mouthed, the best that 2 or 3 notes can do, you admit, Rubes, yes? Through the scope of their snipers' rifles peering with convulsing eyelids gyrating focal targets into center range with EJ this time accompanying him as Reuben commenced with the buzzing cello's alto voice before, da-da, 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 da-da. Was followed by a trifold upward syllabic climb 2 octaves higher that's articulating EJ fluttered through a whistle, thereby breaking the otherwise enchanting movie score motive's droning hum. Hussein returned to the Kidron Valley area where Moses and Elijah above on Olive's Mount as though oblivious to the locust squadrons in helicopters and the occasional MiG jet dicing up the visible air overhead and about Linga, having pitched their tents 2 days prior while beyond the Transfiguration event again hanging out there and speaking to the many individuals. Soldiers who would assault instead becoming entangled as though by design, mystified and incapacitated and stilled like statues when down to their knees with suddenly sabotaged weaponry and other equipments going AMUCK and awry in instances tore away at last of nerves thread fibers. Others irresistibly drawn to what they perceive were the very words of God as prophets watch on and speak largely amongst themselves to these who had their own way of say it. If she goes down then we here in Jerusalem go down with the ship instead of being led to NASA mountain range installations that dot the unhinged globe. Maccabees in his own way cheered, saluting the bravado in the remiss of one. The prophets had their way of only reassuring them only while distressing the spirits inside of men who were otherwise dispositioned for the love of and respect of the dead, shared with word groupings such as, I also have heard of their so-called biblical literalist term but this does take it too far. Rainbows alive. The man Ezekiel alive again. Only he could do this thing. Stressed in such a way that the pronouns spoken along, him, would have sufficed. Happy 3rd anniversary, Hussein. To the day, you hit the temple. Your S-wine trolls, they missed me. Little scratch or 2. Bullet passed right through. All fixed. Patched up. To this Judah heard the deposed man without a soul to trust mouthing something too wounded to come across as the mocking jest about a marriage called off and the AWOL rapture that missed the soldier alongside the entire planet. And the soldier Ezekiel had long since joined the heckling Judah Maccabees up there on top of the yet reconstructed Eastern Gate. Smiling a conspiratorial wink to the dislodged grave covers just across the way from them. Something over yonder as he while laying with belly flat against the upper outside stone at the foot of a second temple level lean on the barrel of his machine gun. Motoring his mouth and failing the inquiry of his comrade while seeming to for a long second dialogue with same ancient sepulchre ground. What remained of his battalions given to his authority were watching from some place undisclosed. Smelling the fuel and the elements alive with heated and distressed elements that was wartime's endowment. all the while wondering what was becoming of their compatriots fighting on the mountains of Israel, while knowing full well where Nasser was at. 'Twas right here in proximity of where would Messiah soon touch down. The man, as though out of a straitjacket struggling to free himself, wrestled with whatever it was that invisibly attacked and pestered him. The same body did as soon retract, and as important as, heavy and attached to a crankshaft wheel to break a layer of cloud either abruptly or prematurely, and persons alerted as rampant rocket fire trajectories laboring to compensate for that void left by ever-reliable Iron Dome's redoubtable tasks. Sirens once again begin to swell, this with the all-familiar screaming sounds of missile obliterating any motif of calm's intimation that would only infrequently deceptively lend to intimation of lull on this battle zone, knowing the many battles. From the tangle of thistly brush wherein Nasser on his back lay, feeling tormented with anguish by that blood-red moon that seemed to mock and jaw on, while to his upper left side the tombs of the faithfully deceased witness on, whereas toward his distant right side away from the road the Temple Mount Dome from within sight of the newly constructed mega mount seemed to wink with an eye. The prophets who'd watched on as he wrestled with invisible spirit forces that would hem him in from every which direction stood close by, but only to the violently expressive man's oblivion. If his thoughts and general disposition could be adapted to song, then, the title almost appropriate, as he with blood seeping out from a corner of his mouth chastised the lunar bulb for losing what he'd perceived as its smile on the same 9th day of AV 3 years prior, tinged both dark and bright crimson. The laughter from song seeming to be the only thing sustaining him there, as his visual blur extracted from blistering disrepair, only to as soon, on throbbing pulse feeling like a kettle drums impacting in each eye, return. Then no song better than Osborne's bark at the moon would suffice.